It is our last video today about motivation. In the previous two videos, we covered five main issues. In the first one, we covered three main issues or main points, and they are: what is the definition of motivation? Number two, what what about the functions of motivations? Number three, what about the role of motivation in organization? And in the second video, we looked at two main points. Number one, what is the difference between intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation? And number two, what about some related concepts or variables such as need, drive, motive, and incentive? Our video today, we will cover three additional issues. They will be about number one, the Maslow theory, which is referred to as hierarchy of needs, or the rank of motives, or the rank of needs. And then we will discover some about the Yerkes-Dodson law, which describes the relationship between arousal and performance, and also between tension and the performance, motivation and the performance, and anxiety and the performance. And the last issue or last point will be what about the relationship between the level of arousal and the difficulty of tasks. Now, before moving on to our topic today, I would like to recap or summarize what we already covered in the previous two videos. In video number one, we discussed first the definition of motivation, and already we introduced two definitions. Definition number one, it says motivation is an internal state. And as we said before, motivation is a covert behavior that activates behavior and gives it direction. And the motivation is the driving force behind all actions of human beings, animals, and lower organisms. So we can deal with motivation as the cause of our behavior. In the second definition, we define the motivation as a process of arousing. So we have arousability. If you are motivated, we have a high degree of arousability, and we mean by arousability an anxiety or tension. And as sustaining goal-directed behavior, so we have a key concept in motivation. It is referred to as the goal-directed behavior. And we mean by goal-directed behavior that motivation is the desire to act in service of goal. Motivation is a process of arousing and sustaining a goal-directed behavior induced by the expectation of satisfying individual needs. And you have to expect that you can get your goal. If you don't expect that you can get your goal, you will not be motivated. And the motivation process is a circular dimension. We have a circle, and this shape or figure talks about itself. We have unsatisfied need, and the end is with new unsatisfied needs. And in between, we have tension. And if you are motivated, if you have some sort of need, you will be tensive. So you have drives. I mean by drives, you are willing to do anything to get your goal and to have your goal and satisfy your need. So we have search behavior. And if we will be able to find our goal, to gain our goal, to get our goal, In that case, we will be satisfied. So we have satisfied needs. And what about tension? Tension will reduce, but after maybe few seconds, few minutes, few days, few years, we will have a new unsatisfied need. So we have a circle like this. And as I said, we have a key concept in motivation. It is referred to as goal directed behavior. And the definition of goal directed behavior is a set of attitudes and values that influence a person to act in a specific goal directed manner. So, as I said before, motivation is a desire to act in service of goal. But as we said before, also research shows that people can influence their own levels of motivation and self-control. And motivation is a crucial element in setting and attaining one's objectives. So we have goal-directed behavior, and you will not be satisfied and you will not be able to achieve your needs if you will not be able to get your goal. Then we looked at the functions of motivation, and as we said before, we have three functions: directing or steering function, activating function, and the control function. So we consider motivation as the cause of our behavior. Then we discussed the role of motivation in organization. And as we said, in today's organizations, motivation plays an important role in determining whether a company will succeed or not. And of course, each company has its desired goal, and the manager have to achieve the goals of the organization. How? Through employees, through workers. And one of the most effective way to do that, to increase their inner drive, to change their inner drive, to increase their motivation. And in turn, this will increase their production in a way, helping in achieving the goal of organization. And in that case, manager can use techniques of motivation aim to satisfy the needs of workers and aim to increase their inner drives. But he should take into account that different workers have different needs, and even they have the same needs, they are different in the priorities of these needs, the priorities of the satisfaction of these needs. That's all we looked at in video number one. In the second video, we discussed two main issues. Issue number one related to the difference between intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. And as I said before, motivation can have many sources, and often people have multiple motives for engaging in any one behavior. Motivation may be extrinsic, whereby a person is inspired by outside forces, such as other people or events that inspire them. And also motivation can also be intrinsic, whereby the inspiration comes from within a person and the desire to improve at a certain activity. Intrinsic motivation tends to push people more forcefully, and accomplishments are more fulfilling. And as I said before, our religion, either we are Muslims or Christians, entail help others without expecting any thing in return. So our religion emphasizes the role of intrinsic or internal motivation. And already I gave you an example, an illustration, discriminate between the two kinds of motivation. And now, what about the definition of each one? And what about the examples of each one? Intrinsic motivation, it refers to motivations that comes from within the individual instead of from outside. But extrinsic motivation, it comes from outside. This is from within the individual, from outside the individual. And intrinsic motivation occurs when people are internally motivated to do something because it is either brings them pleasure, they feel happy if they do this act, or they think it is very important, or they feel that what they are doing or learning are is significant. But we have common extrinsic motivations such as rewards, like as money, grades, coercion. If I'm going to coerce to you to do any act, in that case you are externally motivated, not internally motivated. And if you are trying to avoid the threat of punishment, in that case you are externally motivated. Cheering trophies are also some common extrinsic motivations. And what about competition? Competition also is some sort of extrinsic motivation, because in competition you are interested in how to beat others, how to win, not how to enjoy the behavior itself. Then we differentiate between some overlapped variables, some overlapped concepts, some related concepts, and they are need, drive, motive, incentive. What about need? As we said, need is necessary for organism to live a healthy life. And if you will not be able to achieve your needs, if you are not able to satisfy your needs and meet your goals, in that case, this will produce dysfunction or maybe death. And this is the main difference between needs and wants. And the needs can be classified into two basic categories: objective and physical needs, such as need for food, water, and this will be referred to as drive; and subjective and psychological or social needs, such as need for self-esteem, self-actualization, need for affiliation, need for curiosity, and so on. What about drive? As we said before, if you are talking a specific type of needs, it is of physiological origin. It is referred to as drive, and it expresses a body need. So drive is one kind of the need, and it is called the drive. And the body need is the most common drive, such as need for air, water, rest, warmth, sexual, and also drive is referred to as survival needs. And what about motive? Motive is the second type of need, and it is of physiological or sorry, psychological or social origin, and it is also referred to as desire. So, which is referred to also as desire motive. So, if I ask you question like that, both true or false and correct. The false statement, drive is referred to as desire. No, which is referred to as desire is motive. And we have two kinds of motives. One of them, psychologically intrinsic motivation, and we mean by intrinsic here, psychological. And they are like as need for curiosity, for competence, for achievement. And we have the second type is social extrinsic motives, and such as need for affiliation, for attention, approval, dominance, and independence. What about incentive? If we are talking about incentive, we are not talking about the need itself, but we are talking about the external thing that the organism seek to obtain it to reduce tension and satisfy the need. So it is also referred to as a reinforcer or goal. For example, if I said the marks in the need for achievement in psychology is drive or is motive. No, false. The marks in the case of the need for achievement is incentive. But if I said the need for achievement is motive or psychological intrinsic motive. Definitely, it is psychological intrinsic motives. That's all we looked at before. Now, what about our main issue, our three main issues today? Today, as I said, we will cover some about the hierarchy of Maslow, and then we discover the Yerkes-Dodson law, and finally, we will talk about the relationship between level of arousability and the difficulty of tasks. What about the Abraham Maslow theory? It is Abraham Maslow theory is maybe it is considered the most widely discussed theory of motivation. Although it is an old theory, in this theory that proposed or developed by the American psychologist Abraham Maslow, it is a framework used to understanding motivation and the hierarchy or rank of motives or rank of needs. It is developed by Maslow in 1954, and it is referred to as hierarchy of needs or rank of needs. Maslow sorted the human needs into five basic categories, and then he arranged them. Firstly, he sorted them into five basic categories, and then he arranged them into a hierarchical order. Hierarchical order like this. And then he arranges them into a hierarchical order according to what? According to their importance, according to their significance? No, but according to the priorities of their satisfaction. Which one should be satisfied first, which one should be satisfied second, third, fourth, fifth, and so on. And the survival needs, which is also referred to as physiological needs, and also referred to as drive, and also referred to as body needs, physical needs, take care. Survival needs can be labeled as physiological needs, drive, body need, physiological need, physical need. Occupy the base or the bottom of the hierarchy like this. This is the survival needs or physiological needs. This is the base or the bottom of the hierarchy, while self-actualization needs occupy the top of the hierarchy. And in between, we have three layers, as you can figure out from this shape: safety needs or security needs, love, belongingness needs, or belongingness need, or affiliative needs. It is also referred to as affiliative need. And then we have self-esteem needs. So he uh, 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 sorted the human needs and then arranged them according to the priorities of their satisfaction. And you should be acquainted with that. Lower needs have to be satisfied before higher level needs. These lower needs and these higher needs. We have first, each one have satisfy physiological needs, then security needs or safety needs, then affiliative or love belongingness needs, then self-esteem needs, and then the higher level of needs, self-actualization needs. So we lower level should be satisfied before the higher level of needs. This is the hierarchy of Maslow. Physiological needs such as need for food, water, sex, and so on. Safety needs, and in safety needs we have it is also referred to as security needs. For example, security of body, security of employment, security of resources, morality, family, security of family, security of health, security of properties, also included in safety or security needs. And then we have love and belongingness or affiliative needs, friendship, family, sexual intimacy. Here we were talking about sex, and this is physiological needs. But mainly here we are talking about intimacy. Intimacy or sexual intimacy is referred to as love or belongingness. And then we have self-esteem needs, and self-esteem needs include self-esteem, confidence, achievement, respect of others, to be respected by others. And then we have self-actualization. It is the top, and we can say that self-actualization to be what you would like to be or to fulfill your full potentials. If you would be able, and it is very hard task, but if you would be able to fulfill your full potentials, in that case, you can satisfy your self-actualization. What about briefly the definition of each one? Physiological needs are requirements for human survival. They are requirements for our life. We cannot live without them. It's because they express body needs. They are drives, physiological needs, physical needs, objective needs, and they are requirements for our life. And if you would not be able to meet these needs, what happen? Maybe dysfunction or death. And as we said before, we have examples of these physiological needs. What about the second layer of the hierarchy? In the second layer, we can find security. This is the second layer, and this is the first one. Safety need or security need. And with their physical needs relatively satisfied, if the individual can satisfy his physical needs, then the individual's safety needs take precedence and dominate our behavior. And safety needs, including examples, as I said before, job security, personal, financial, health and well-being security, which is now referred to as health insurance, for example, and safety against illness, accidents, and so on. After physiological and safety needs are fulfilled, the third layer of human needs are social, and they are and it is referred to as love and belongingness or affiliative needs. And we have examples such as intimacy, need for family, need for friendship, and so on. And then we have the fourth layer. It is referred to as self-esteem, and it includes two types of respectness. Number one, to be respected by others. Number two, to respect yourself. So Maslow sorted or noted two versions of self-esteem need. He classified self-esteem needs into two categories. The first one referred to as the lower level. In the lower level, to be respected by others, the need for status, recognition, fame, prestige, and attention. Look, it's a very big, they are very big and important issues, but he considered them as, or put them in the lower level of self-esteem. What about the higher level? To respect yourself, confidence, self-competence, independence, freedom, and this is the higher level of self-esteem. What about the last layer or the fifth layer in the Maslow's hierarchy or Maslow's theory? It is referred to as self-actualization, to be what to be, or we can define it as to achieve the person's full potential. If you would be able to achieve your full potentials, in that case, you can satisfy your self-actualization needs. and it is a huge matter and a very difficult issue we seek to all over our life. Now, what about the Yerkes-Dodson law? The second issue I would like to discuss today, Yerkes and Dodson introduced a law relate between performance and tension, or performance and anxiety, performance and arousal, performance and motivation. Now check this figure. In that case, we have performance and we have arousal, and we can also change arousal with motivation, anxiety, or tension. So the same relation between an arousal and the performance is the same relationship between an anxiety and the performance, is the same relationship between motivation and the performance, is the same relationship between tension and performance. In this figure, we can find that the relationship between arousal and performance is not a linear relationship. If it is a linear relationship, it would be like this, but it should be straight line, or like this. This is a straight line, should be straight line, and that one should be straight line. In that case, it is a positive relationship, and it means with the increase of arousal, we have an increase in performance. And this one, a negative relationship, and it means with the increase in arousal, we have a decrease in performance. But we don't have these two kinds of linear relationship. We don't have linear relationship, either positive linear relationship or negative linear relationship. What we have? We have a curve linear relationship. What do we mean by a curve linear relationship? With the increase in arousal, this is the increase in arousal, we have an increase in performance, but up to a certain point. This is a certain point. Up to a certain point. What happened after this certain point? Or it is also can be referred to as midpoint. So before the midpoint or this certain point, with the increase in arousal, we have an increase in performance. What happened after that? After this certain point, with the increase in arousal, we have deterioration or decrease in performance. This is referred to as a linear relationship, because with the increase in arousal, we have an increase in performance, but not forever, up to a certain point, and it is also referred to as the peak, the top of the curve, the peak of the curve. After this peak, we have a decrease in performance if we still have an increase in arousal. And the same we can say about the relationship between motivation and the performance, and also between tension and the performance, and anxiety and the performance. So the performance will be at its peak when arousal, this is the performance, will be at its peak when the arousal is at moderate level. And too much, this is too much arousal. little arousal. This is too little. What happens in performance? In the two cases, performance equal zero. So too much or too little arousal results in low performance level. This is the relationship between arousal, motivation, tension, and anxiety on the one hand, and the performance on the other hand. The last point in this chapter, what about the level of arousal and the difficulty of tasks? Research has found that different tasks require different level of arousal for optimal performance. Different type of tasks require different level of arousal. For example, if you are doing difficult task or intellectually demanding task, tasks need thinking, need to reflect on your acting, and difficult or intellectually demanding require a lower level of arousal. Why? Because with the increase of arousability, what happened to attention? We have a decrease in attention. So in order to facilitate your focus, to facilitate your concentration, you should have lower level of arousal. I mean by arousal, tension. So difficult or intellectually demanding tasks require a lower level of arousal. Why? To facilitate concentration, focus, attention, and so on. But what about tasks demanding stamina or persistence? May be performed better with higher level of arousal. Why? In order to increase our motivation. And you have to remember that when we define the motivation, in the second definition, we said it is an internal, or one of the definition we introduced, it was saying it is an internal state of arousal. So with the increase of arousal, we have an increase in motivation. And already, if you are motivated to do anything, you will be tensive and have a high level of arousal or arousability. Now, I would like to run through again what we said today. Firstly, we started with Abraham Maslow needs, and we said it is the most widely discussed theory. And Maslow sorted the human needs into five basic categories, and then he arranged them into a hierarchical order. And these needs are physiological or survival needs, then safety needs, love and belongingness needs, affiliative needs, self-esteem needs, and self-actualization. And of course, lower level needs should be satisfied first and before the higher level needs. And then we discussed the Yerkes-Dodson law, which try to describe the relationship between arousal and the performance, tension and the performance, and anxiety and the performance, motivation and the performance. And as we said, we have a curvilinear relationship, and the performance will be at its peak when arousal is at moderate level, or when tension is at moderate level, or when motivation is at moderate level, or when anxiety is at moderate level. And too much arousal or tension, motivation, and anxiety are also too little arousal will leads or will be reduced or result in low performance. And then we describe the relationship between level of arousability and the difficulty of tasks, and then we differentiate between two type of tasks. The first one intellectually demanding tasks or difficult tasks, and as we said, they require a lower level of arousal to facilitate concentration. And second type of tasks that demanding persistence or stamina, and they may be performed better with higher level of arousal in order to increase our motivation. That's all about motivation. Uh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And that's all today.